you who's listening, if you want this to work, you probably need to do both. You probably need to have your podcast. You probably need to stay with your podcast, launch your podcast, grow your podcast, keep having interviews, keep having solos, whatever it is for your podcast, you've got to do it.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
What's up, podcaster? It's your host, Adam Adams. And today I get to talk about somebody that I look up to, somebody that I respect and admire and follow his advice. And frankly, wish he was my best friend because this guy is a badass. He's just great in all of the ways. His name's Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary V. And many, many years ago, I was a high-end restaurant person. So I managed a French restaurant. I did serving and I did the bar manager and then I did regular general manager and loved a lot about working in fine restaurant. One of my favorite things is we did wine tastings all the frickin' time. And I just really fell in love with wine. And now I actually collect wine. I've got more than 100 bottles, easily more than 100 bottles. Some of them are expensive. Some of them are cheap. I can't only do expensive bottles because sometimes I drink 2 or 3 bottles with my friends in one night. So I collect everything. And it's not always the price that makes good wine. And Gary Vaynerchuk taught me that a long time ago. And most of you don't know this, but prior to him launching what he does now, which is an advertising agency, coaching, mentoring, running masterminds, the stuff that he does now with his agency, the one-day VIPs that people come in and spend a shit ton of money just to be with him for a few hours. Before he did that, he ran his family's wine shop. And before anyone else was really putting their wine online on the internet, they only had the shops. Gary Vaynerchuk said, Dad, I'm going to sit down with a table and I'm going to put 2 or 3 wines in front of me and I'm going to taste them and I'm going to spit them out. And he spat them out right there on camera. And he would talk about wine in a very general way, in a way that's not looking down your nose like those people. And I loved it. So what I would do is I would get ideas. I would go and look at Grenache and Syrah and Mourvedre and Cabernet and Cab Franc and all these other grapes and the years. And I would watch him, listen to him, and I would try to buy the same wines and I would try to taste them. And he's like saying, this one's got strawberry or this one's got plum or this one's got peach or this one's got blackberry. This one's got tar. This one's got tobacco. This one's got smoke. All these different notes that he said he either smelled on the nose or he tasted on the tongue. And so I loved what he was doing. And then he switches directions. Gary switched directions and his dad's company was making fine. They now were selling, most of their wines were being ordered and they didn't even have to stock the wine because they would just make the order for the client, for the customer, and it would be dropped off or delivered by somebody there, or it would be shipped another way directly to the doorstep of that person. And all of a sudden they make a lot more money. And he learned something. And that's what we're getting into for today's episode. Gary V learned something. He learned that you got to be active on social media. And you're like, oh no, what do you mean? Gary Vaynerchuk says you got to be active on social. It's like a business card. One of the first takeaways that he said, you got to be active on social. It's a business card because of this. When your person who wants to work with you is going to vet you, they are going to search for you on LinkedIn and Facebook and other platforms. They're just going to type in your name and see what comes up. If nothing comes up, they don't trust you. And they go with the other person. If nothing comes up, they don't trust you. They have to see what you're about. They want to know, is this person reckless? Are they going to spend all my money on this one thing? Are they the same faith as me? Do they believe in the same nature as me? Do they believe in the same God as me? Do they believe in mountain biking like I do? Would I get along with this person? Is this the kind of person that I could trust? They find that stuff out by going to your social. So Gary Vaynerchuk said a couple of things. He said you had to be active on social, and he said that you have to put out content with a podcast. So in 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, I was all about wine and I was following Gary V. 2015 comes around and I'm going back to my entrepreneurship. I'm going back to being full-time in real estate, launching different businesses. And Gary Vaynerchuk says, I think it was 2015, perfect timing for me. He goes, if you're not active on social media, and have a podcast by the year 2023, you will fail in business. So that brings us to what Gary Vaynerchuk said. What did Gary V actually say? Gary V says that you who's listening, if you want this to work, you probably need to do both. You probably need to have your podcast. You probably need to stay with your podcast, launch your podcast, grow your podcast, keep having interviews, keep having solos, whatever it is for your podcast, you've got to do it. And you've got to have your social going. You got to be on LinkedIn and or Facebook or TikTok or Instagram. What's that other one? There's more. There's a lot more. But you should be on at least 2 of those platforms and have your podcast. And by doing all of this, your business won't suffer. So if your business is suffering today and you don't have a podcast, start your freaking podcast. Your business is suffering today and you're not active on social media. You're not posting on social media. You have the account, but you never post. People aren't going to trust you when they search you. So you need to start being active on social. And Gary Vaynerchuk also said, jab, jab, right hook. He wrote a book about jab, jab, right hook. What does jab, jab, right hook even mean? It means the boxers, when you're fighting, they don't just throw these big giant blows. They throw quick punches to surprise their opponent. They jab them. They tap their face a few times. And when it's time, when the punch will land, they take the extra efforts and inertia and time that it takes them to throw a big right hook with all their might. It would be a freaking waste of time to throw your right hook before that happened. At the wrong point in time, they would just dodge it. And then you would use all of this effort and then you would line yourself up in a bad way and you would be the one who got punched down. So you got to put in those jabs. What does that mean on social media? I think it means, and what Gary V has said, is that you can't always just be selling only. You've got to be giving. And this will depend on the platform. If it's YouTube or if it's TikTok, for example, you can do a lot more right hooks where it's content. But, think of it like this. The jabs are the fun content that help people, and the right hooks are after you've brought them in, after you've gotten a feel for what's going on because of the jabs. Now you can have them hire you, or you can throw that right hook with, hey, I can help you. But the link's in the show notes, for example. I can help you. The link is below. So the jab, jab, right hook on Facebook might be a little bit different. Most of the time you talk about your hobbies and your children and your travels. So my hobby might be bodybuilding or taking ice baths or yoga or mountain biking or CrossFit or art, crafts or piloting, air flight. I would constantly post about my kids. I would constantly post about when I'm on a vacation just to let people know what's going on so that they can see that I'm a real person. Those are the jabs. Talk about piloting, CrossFit, mountain biking, your kids, your travels, whatever. And then the right hooks are about your business. So you might put up a testimonial. Hey, got a great testimonial from one of my clients and I wanted to share it on here. It meant a lot to me. And that's the right hook. That's the right hook, meaning a way for you to jab, jab, right hook. So Gary V says what? He says, first 2 things, you got to be active on social media or you're going to lose in business by the year 2023. And wake up, folks. We're already at the end of 2023. Like 2024 is happening. And before we know it, 2025 is happening. And if you didn't do this, if you're not doing this right now, you've lost in business. Your clients are going to the other person who's active on social and has a podcast. Next thing that Gary V says is jab, jab, right hook. Don't always sell. Don't always make it hard on other people to be at that content. Give them some stuff, give them some value, and then let them know that they could hire you. Tell them about your hobbies, your kids, let them into your life, and then tell them about your business. And when Gary V was writing his book called Jab, Jab, Right Hook, that rhymes. I was like, did I say that right? Jab, Jab, Right Hook is the book that Gary V was writing. And when he was writing it, he was hoping that he could call it something with a lot more jabs and then the right hook. But his writing team said, no, it'll sell better with just 2 jabs. And he almost said this. I remember watching an interview. He goes, I said, if it didn't have like 20 jabs, I wasn't going to do it. And he lost that battle, still published the book. But here's the point. Here's the learning lesson in that. It doesn't mean that you have to go 1, 2, and then sell. Give, sell. Give, sell. That sounds like that one song, goon, goon, ch, Anyway, it doesn't mean give, sell, give, sell. It doesn't mean that you have to do 2/3 and 1/3, 1, 1, 2. If you go with the advice that Gary V really wanted you to think of, He has a lot more jabs. It's a lot more value. How can you support your person? How can you help your person? Who's on your social media or who's on your podcast, on LinkedIn or whatever? How can you give before you ask for that sale? Think about it as multiple jabs and then the right hooks. That might actually make it easier on you, because I've had a lot of clients that came through, and I used to just teach social media. I had a business to teach social media, taught. Obviously, I'm not a teacher that way, but I had a business where I basically consulted only with a few high-level people. So it was $40,000 to work with me for a year. And then anytime they would post, they would send the post to me first, and I would tweak it for them and send it back. And they would get like lots of likes and comments. And in doing so, I would teach this jab, right hook as well to them. And I would say, you're going too much about the business. Let people in first. I also had a couple of people that came to me and they were very afraid of the business. They didn't want to throw a right hook. They didn't want to. And so I had to talk them into it. I had to say, don't worry, you can do lots of jabs. One guy, he's all about something called earthing. There's another term too, grounding. And so basically every weekend he goes to the same park, he takes his shoes off and he grounds himself to the earth, or he earths. He walks on the beach. And basically, I'm not going to teach the entire thing, but it's supposed to be very good for you. And I practice it as well. And he was passionate about that, but he wasn't really passionate about like multifamily syndication and asking people for money. And that's what he wanted to do, is ask people for money. So I worked with him. I said, don't worry, it doesn't have to be 2 jabs and then the right hook. It can be like 6 jabs, 7 jabs, and then the right hook. That worked for him. I think it was 68 and he ended up turning 70 recently. He was like 68 at the time. And although he was in great health, he looked like he was 25. His physical fitness, as he was doing jab, right hook, he didn't even want to post on social media at all. And he only bought into it because he didn't have to push his business down people's throats. And that's the takeaway for you too, is you don't have to push your business down anyone's throat. You don't have to shove it there. You can just share the kind things, the nice things, the value, and about your hobbies, and it'll all work out. So make sure you got your podcast, make sure you're active on social media, use the jab, right hook, and I will see you on the very next episode. Don't go away. We'll be right there. This is serious. Don't go. Now that you've gotten whatever value that you feel that you got, the actionable takeaways, you need to implement the stuff that you learned. If you remember me talking about bird church once, and they learn how to fly, and then they walk home. I don't want you to walk home. I want you to fly home. So take the steps, take the actionable steps for your benefit so that you can become a better podcaster. That's the only thing that I ask of you. And I'll see you for more actionable tips on the very next episode.